All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Health Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Derek, two-sport collegiate athlete, certified personal trainer, and a teacher of over 20 years. Have an awesome guest with us tonight that I'm super excited to talk to. But before I introduce him, a couple things. Number one, we're not doctors, so before you go adjusting programming, nutrition, diet, anything like that, please consult your physician. Also, really trying to push the YouTube channel here, so if you can hop over there, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, give us a follow, like, comment, all that stuff. The Health Movement Podcast over on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you find your podcasts. And also, if you hop over to the healthmovement.us, that's our website, and you can sign up for our weekly newsletter there. All right, now that all that stuff's out of the way, I would love to introduce Tyler Visser. He is a graduate assistant strength and conditioning coach at Northern State University with a bachelor's in exercise science and human performance. Welcome, Tyler.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Did I get all that right?
Yeah,
All right,
definitely.
all right. On occasion, I messed that up. I didn't want to do that this time on you.
No, you're good.
All right. So before we hopped on, you have obviously a background exercise science, human performance, but you played a little football yourself. Can you talk a little bit about your transition from being an athlete yourself, your playing days, into where you are right now?
Yeah, I guess to really start from the beginning, like it started like growing up, I always kind of liked athletics. It always kind of drew me to it. Just stereotypical kid liking football, seeing the Seahawks, being a big Seahawks fan. I was born in Seattle, but then I spent most of my life in Boise, Idaho, really since like the age of 7. So just seeing athletics, I'd play like neighborhood ball. Just friendly little sports stuff like that, but really never got into organized sports. We did it's called like PAL football or Optimist football here, just like child organized sports, but it was very wishy washy.
Yep.
And I just always kind of liked athletics as a whole, but like we were talking about earlier, I really gravitated towards video games. So like straight up,
Yeah.
like that was the main thing I was doing until I kind of, you know, for me it was around like 14 where I was like, okay, I kind of like I'm bored of this, but I also kind of want to push myself towards something that gives a little bit more adversity or a little bit more drive, which is something that I've noticed I have a lot of. I'll get really manic about one thing and then dive into it, and then it's on to the next, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of my personality with it. And so it really wasn't until that sophomore, junior year of high school where I really committed to trying my hardest with football and really diving into it. Again, no previous real experience playing the sport, understanding it that much. Um, and that's kind of what led me towards being a very, I want to say, late bloomer in athletics or late bloomer in sports. I was probably like senior year. I was granted uh, technically an edge or outside linebacker, but 170 pounds at my fullest, which is still like 30 pounds more than where I was sophomore year, right? So there definitely
That's
was
a that's a big jump right there.
and so I still like the strength and conditioning aspect and blend that together in this definitely played a role and kind of really allowed me to get to the level I was able to, which was a good little stint at Boise. So being that late bloomer, I did have to rely a lot on just hard training. And again, like everybody, probably a little bit too much, too often, not really understanding the recovery process and all
Yeah.
that. But it was definitely, that intrigue of, how the body's able to adapt to stress, how the body's able to recover and come back stronger and be more resilient for the next bout of whatever it is you're doing. Um, really started to click with me of like, wow, I went from I guess squatting 225 for 10 reps to now 12 reps to 15 reps on squat, in a matter of weeks. Uh, this is this is awesome. I kind of want to learn more of that. And I've always been a scientific type of person that likes sciences, whether it be biology, which is probably my strong suit, chemistry. Like I love it. I can't like I really got to dive our focus into it with all the rules and all that stuff. But
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I admire it a whole lot. So um, pretty much just training hard and having that ability to train hard, kind of probably pretty cliche coming from a strength coach, but living in the weight room and being really good at training and getting my head down and getting to work and being able to outwork the other guy is really what got me to the level of football that I got to. Not so much right? And there's obviously that requirement of it, but not so much my talent or skill, because right, we have guys that are playing since being, little kids, 7, 12 years old. That's all they've done is football, to where now I just got into it because, like, okay, I want to actually, I only got a couple years left. I got to make the most of it, see where this goes.
Yeah.
And then
I
like that.
was I was talking to somebody today, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I feel like football, and I started in like third grade and played up through college. So I had that background, and my dad played football growing up. So he like definitely taught me a bunch with that. So I had that, but I feel like of all the major sports, if you work hard, if you're a good athlete and you're willing to put the time in football, you can come into much later than something like soccer or basketball or lacrosse, where you've got all those fundamentals and ball control. If you can get
Yeah.
somebody in space who's an athlete and get a ball in his hands, you can make people miss. Which,
Yeah, same,
and
exactly.
somebody who's
I agree.
willing to get their butt in the gym, eat well, recover, do those things, you can, you put on 30 pounds in a year. That had to open some eyes around you.
Yeah, exactly. And so, right, it was, and still like, I still have to go the JUCO route. Again, I was like begging my coach, hey, get my name out to coaches or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the major ones, I was seeing other people commit, seeing other guys commit, rightfully so, because they were monsters, right? All of them. I think the biggest thing, so it was Rocky Mountain High School, is where I went to, class of 2017, and probably had the best O line to this day that I really ever have seen from a high school. Obviously,
Yeah.
like Bishop Gorman and all those big schools aside, like Connor Woody, Zach Red, Jake Wilkerson, all these dudes that were like 280 plus in high school,
Wow.
in Idaho at the time. And granted, Idaho's blown up a lot now, right? And that was kind of where it was starting to blow up. But I was seeing them going to Idaho State, Montana State. I was like, hey, can let me just give me a give me a shout out to like maybe be a good walk on or whatnot. And just
Yeah.
didn't happen, right? So then I randomly get a text from a coach at Sierra College. And luckily with the support group I had, they really funded and allowed that opportunity, or for me to take advantage of that opportunity. Um, and that's where I think, right, if we think of nice even steps of progression, it was the junior college experience where it was just a big major step, just so exponential to all the others. Because again, uh, technique, game sense aside, like just the training was good. They ran off the juggernaut system, which is, from my perspective now looking back at it, I think is really awesome to go off Chad Wesley Smith. I know he's a pretty smart guy. Granted, they didn't have a dedicated strength coach, but to be able to implement one of their systems or implement one of their programs, uh, I think was honestly pretty good. It was a pretty good system looking back at it, right? And so again, that physical development, my physical qualities, the general qualities I had, are what really catapulted me or allowed me, to go through the ranks. And then even still, right, JUCO, bouncing all over the place, but fourth game of sophomore year, I got a tib fib fracture from a dog pile falling on
Uh,
top of me against Diablo Valley. So wasn't compound, stayed within the skin, but definitely like sophomore year, fourth game, can't redshirt any of that. Um, but to be able to come back from that again, I I grant training, having a good physical therapist who did give me progressive resistance training to allow me to get that leg as healthy as possible, to still get a chance to get to Boise State through the film I acquired at Sierra College and all that. So again, being able to rely on my physical abilities is what really allowed me to get some playing time at Boise, a lot of start at Sierra College. And then again, mix that in with the interest I had of, you know, uh, uh, biological sciences and all that, the whole strength coach thing came together, especially once I started talking a lot more with the strength staff that we got at Boise State. After Harson, with Coach Avalos, he brought in some guys from Oregon, Coach White. Well, he was from San Jose State, but Coach Kagi from Oregon. And they gave us first strength staff to give us the why on what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, rather than
the
just.
why is huge.
Exactly.
Understanding in all
Yeah,
aspects of anything, it's huge.
exactly. And I think a lot of strength coaches now, like, yes, we understand what we're doing. Like, we know why we're doing it. And then I get some feelings from some sides, and then not so much from the others, of it doesn't really matter what the athletes think of it because they just have to do it. For me, it's like, if there's someone in the crowd or someone in the group of players that I'm coaching that has a similar behavior, or tendencies to me, that knowing why we're doing something is going to create that much more intent during the activity, whether it's sprints, whether it's jumps, whether it's the lift, right? Instead of just telling them to get under the bar, right? I think
Yeah.
takes a good blend of being a kind of like a couple guys I've been listening to, like Austin Jokum, being a meathead, but also understanding what it is we're chasing, what quality is it that we're trying to chase, and let those athletes know why that's going to help them in their sport that they're participating in. So that's kind of really long but short, jumping
Yeah.
all over what really got me to want to become a strength coach. And again, another big reason is just to help be a guy that creates that camaraderie and help the team environment grow and also be around that team environment. I think being around it and investing in it as much as I have, I've tried like took a couple gap years here and there to experience other things, and there's just nothing that kind of satisfies my brain as much as being in that environment, no matter kind of what it is.
That's awesome that you were able to take those, little diversions here and there just to test other things and realize that, the strength and conditioning that's what you love, that's your passion, and that's what you're
Yeah,
trying to do. That's so what's the plan for the future? Is there do you want to stay with football and work with specific teams or
it's a great question. Like, so at Northern, to give a little bit of background with that, right? I came in, had a great interview with Coach Neer, the director there, and put me in charge of baseball. Uh,
oh awesome.
while assisting with football, football's his main team really, and it just takes the most amount of time to dedicate to with the
Yeah.
setup of here, right? So he's in charge of that, but assisting with it, giving input, right? And he's very open about getting that outside perspective, especially even if from guys you would consider like me who might be a little bit green to the profession, but get in charge of baseball, and then recently or this last semester one of our GAs didn't come back, so I got to be in charge now of soccer as well. So just a little bit more
Uh,
responsibility. So women's soccer, we don't have a men's soccer team here.
so you've got baseball, soccer, and football and women's soccer. So you've got three different sort of people that you're working towards. And I mean, I know building strength in mobility is pretty similar across everything, but a baseball player has to train slightly differently than a football player, I would
Yeah,
imagine. How was that for you switching up and looking at the different modes that you need to cover?
yeah. For us, like, and what I really like about here is it's not getting too much away from really. We're just trying to train those general qualities that are gonna allow an athlete to perform in their sport. Take those general qualities and make them specific with whatever the movements they are. Right, for
Yeah.
baseball players, a lot of rotation, a lot of swinging, a lot of pitching. But again, there's still sprints in there that still takes qualities from the force side and the velocity side of the curve. Same with football. Again, just probably a little bit more collision based stuff as far as like contact prep, little things like that. At the end of the day, or like really looking back at it, or when I go to program, it's just managing the stress that we're providing to them with considerations of what they're doing in sport. So that'll be for baseball, right? It might not be as fatiguing or as intense, or I guess a term of like high of an impulse compared to soccer or to football as far as the play style, but their fatigue is still drawn out throughout the whole day, right? So it's a
Yeah.
different, it's still fatigue, it's still stress, but in a different light that still allows us to train them in a certain way compared to soccer, right? Where they're just getting miles on miles in their practices, right? Depending on what they're doing. So being able to adapt the lift to things that they can do that will still benefit them
Yep.
and not kind of how I like to put it with them when I talk to them about it of if they've got a bank account, right? Every activity that they're doing that's withdrawing money from their account, right? In that time that we're inactive or we're recovering or we're at school or whatnot at home resting, that's us depositing back into that account. So if we take too much out of that account, now we're in the red. So now we're having to divert a lot of resources physiologically and just mentally, however you want to put it, towards recovery rather than growth.
I
So
I love that analogy right there. That's a great way to look at it. I haven't heard that before.
appreciate it. That's just kind
But
of where my minds went with it. I'll be honest, I don't know if I came up with myself, if I heard it in a dream, or if I
we'll
heard
say
something.
you came up with it. It'll go with you. That's a Tyler Visser right there.
Anyways, so it really like for us, how we train here is every team's going to do some sort of fundamental movement functional, if you even want to say. That's I know that's kind of a different crowd or growing into a different one, but really it is. We're gonna squat in some capacity, push in
Yeah.
some capacity, all that normal stuff. And I'm a big proponent of Olympic lifts. I think there's just so many qualities from one activity that you can do that it's really hard for me to justify, especially with the time constraints I have for these athletes not to do.
Well,
So
it hits so much, so many body parts and so many movements where if you're just doing a bicep curl, that's really not going to translate very much into
yeah,
any of the sports as opposed to if you're doing much more of a compound Olympic lift where
yeah,
you've got a limited amount of time. Like you said, you have a bank account and all your movements are pulling things out of that. So
yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's a really good point.
So that, and I'm confident in how I teach it, and I want to progress, to even getting these guys to snatch. And it's something where if it's some, I like to coach, and I feel like luckily I'm at that age. And not saying older coaches aren't, where if I can't do it with proficiency, uh, you know, can I teach my athletes to? And so it's something where, especially with snatch, really getting the intricacies of by doing it, learning it, internalizing it, and being able to provide it to other people, things like that is where I'm really confident with them too about. So, um, really going back to that first question of just exactly of managing that stress, providing resistance training, field work, sprint work, however it is, to tap into a certain quality that's also not gonna detract from the whole reason they're there, which is to play that sport. So it really is. I know this one. I know is from Buddy Morris, who I think has a lot of great stuff of just strength coaches being stress managers. So we still got to train those qualities that are gonna keep them elite on the field and keep them from detraining those qualities. So being able to sprint at top speeds, being able to move in a full range of motion with great stability under load, with stress on the body, etc. But doing so in a pragmatic way that's going to allow for them to not again be so in the red that they can't perform at the sport they're going to do. So that's really where I've my philosophy is coming from is just having a base of principles and use those to guide the way I train them. I know here at Northern we use sort of like a total body tiered type of system as far as how we outline the lifts. But again, I think it's always important, especially working with humans, with people, to be adaptable. And maybe they had that double header baseball guys had went that last game of the doubleheader went, 12 innings plus in extra innings.
Yeah.
So now, maybe we're not going to try to do any cleans or any power movement like that. So we'll just keep it very quick, just touch a little bit of probably around 80% of some weight on a certain movement and get them out of there and get them rested. So that way we at least know we tapped that quality, but now we're backing off and letting them rest, recover for the next series that they got to play against.
How much of a challenge was it to convey the importance of recovery to players, especially young ones who think, not making assumptions here, but a lot of younger guys who are just starting to lift, some of them think they know everything and I got to push harder. Like you had said, you push yourself a little too much when you're younger. How do you get that importance of recovery across?
It would be really, I think one main instance that happened was when I first got there, right? Was just explain to them, we go also off like we use percentages mixed with RIR, kind of a blend. Again, it's always somewhere in the middle with how we handle it depending on where we are with the team. But at that moment, we were at like a RP scale, RIR scale, and should
Can
have
you
been
explain just what that is?
yeah, so RPE, RIR, RPE, the rate of perceived exertion, and then RIR is reps in reserve. Both of them we kind of use interchangeably. So for RPE, we use the 6 or 5 out of 10 scale, right? 10 being the hardest you could have done, which would then correlate how we use RIR. For example, RIR 1, which would be you couldn't have done one more rep after that rep you just did, right? So it's all a way to just give a little bit of the athlete some auto regulation onto and give us that ability to see, how hard are we pushing, how hard are we supposed to push that day, what targets are we going for, right? So if we're at a RP 8, we should be at a RIR 2. So difficulty at 8 out of 10 should have no doubt had at least 2 solid reps left in the tank. So that's kind of uh, my way of explaining it a little quick, if that makes sense with that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
So with that, going back to the that instance of how that happened was, or the importance of recovery is, there were times where guys were pretty much failing or struggling or grinding out a rep when we were in right early off season stage of where we should be at like a RP6. So just explain them to that of this is where, right, what I want you guys to understand right now is this is what might lead to us hating being in the weight room or hating training is because we're going to say we're all messed up, we're banged up, we're sore when we're over exceeding our pushing more than we're trying what that target is right now. So getting them to pull back, getting them to understand the big picture, understand we're building up to something to where we want to peak at a certain time right before Christmas break, after fall ball, whatnot, giving them those reasons as to understand how that whole system works, and just over times of discussing it, because I'll tend to ramble a lot after lifts, try to give my nuggets of knowledge to them again,
Yeah.
because I'm again that whole why is a big part of me, but and then also just that morale and camaraderie discussion, giving that little team aspect, a little bit of what I can, and that's kind of where it'll be a mix of. Okay, remember you're not too much of a sport coach, especially with baseball, because it's my first time working with baseball. So I'm saying things. I was up front. I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna learn this sport as I'm working with you guys, so 100%. So know
When I
that."
first started training, I was working with an AAU baseball program in town, and I stopped playing baseball in fifth grade. So
Yeah.
I was worried, like I understood the physical aspect, but coach was like, "All right, I want you to work with the catcher." I'm like, "Dude, I'm not going to help you much
Yeah,
here. This is not going to
exactly.
be
So I
good."
was like, they respected that. They're like, okay, at least, and I think that's a good way to create buy-in. And that's something that you'll hear a lot with coaches of you could have a terrible program or a terrible training cycle, however you want to say, from an objective standpoint set up. But if those athletes are bought into it, you're still going to probably see some good progress from that.
Yeah,
So it's just creating that buy-in, and something from that conscious coaching book Near gave us that we've been reading by Brett Bartholomew, of again creating that buy-in, earning that trust with athletes, just showing the intent, showing that I care over time is what really got them to listen a bit more. Now there's always right old habits are always going to die hard, and guys, this baseball team is what I was happy for is they were one of those teams where it's like we got to pull back instead of pushing
uh,
to do more, which I'll always like to deal with.
yeah,
We would have just done one of our like our upper days, heavy upper days, uh, but the day before I see a couple guys already in there doing incline bench and whatnot, and that just comes from again, I think a little bit of dynamic of with sports like that, they're working with GAs that get rotated out every 2 years, so you
uh,
more or less of that, right? So they never really have a stable. This was their first time. A lot of these guys' first time having a full year with the same strength coach. So I think
yeah,
that also built up a little bit. So really, a lot of that stuff just comes down to building trust, right? So if they want to listen to you, they will because they trust you, and that's where I was tying in a little bit earlier to why I like to do the lifts, why I like to lift myself besides just being a strength coach, is so they can also understand that I know what it is you guys are doing. Now I
yeah.
won't say anything. I'm not going to say anything about what it's like being in the batter's box or on the mound. I'll know
Right.
what energy systems, or I'll know what qualities you probably need to be successful there, but I'm not going to give that experience. Except I've been getting in the batting cages a bit more with those guys, just messing
Oh,
with
they must love that.
them.
Do they throw the heat at you, or they give you a few
They
meatballs to
definitely
swing
they
at?
got a little jug machine in this
Oh, okay, okay.
just towards the end of semester because it'll be really chilled out, right? We're just messing around. We're doing like live ABs and stuff, and they're just watching me strike out because I'm just swinging at everything. I'm getting better at it though.
There was he was a 17-year-old that was pitching in the cages, and his dad's like, "Hey, Derek, you want to go take a few swings?" I'm like, "Absolutely not." The kid was throwing gas, and I know exactly what would have happened with that one. The jugs machine sounds like fun, though. I think I would have
Yeah,
jumped in
'cause
for that.
I think I got around to being able to get in a rhythm of hopefully I think it was around like 70 miles per hour maybe, so I can handle that a little bit. But
They must love seeing you in there, though, jumping. I mean, that gives you a level of respect and everything. You know,
I hope so, because
you're
I'm
in the
just
weeds with them.
yeah, I just do it regardless. That's kind of what's so nice about this kind of profession, right? Is it still allows you to be, I don't want to say a kid again because I know I'm still pretty young, but it just allows you to do fun things like that, still experiencing new things. Like again, football was really the only sport I jumped into. So to be able to, take swings at bats, to be able to go to soccer, especially, uh, and then talking to me about why was that a foul, or why was that whistled off, what would be the play here, why you do those sort of formations. That's what really is an added perk of, being in this type of area or this type of.
Well, you had said early on you like to push yourself and finding new things, and I mean, it doesn't matter what age you are. You can always. I'm 46, and one of the other guests we had on, Mike Agby, has his own mixed martial arts studio. That's maybe 45 minutes away, and he's like, "Derek, come in this summer. Let's get you in there." And I'm like, "All right, a couple times a week. I mean, give this a shot." I took karate in fourth grade for about a month, and I didn't learn to do jump flip like kicks or flips, and so I was like, "I'm done." But now I have definitely a different perspective on it. But like you said, you want to find something to push yourself and challenge yourself, and
Yeah.
it's exciting. It's something new. You're definitely nervous doing it, but it's like, all right, I gotta pay my lumps and pay my dues and go for it that way.
Yeah, but definitely just being, just getting involved in their sports again, not just a show I care, but it is something I really care about. I like when people show interest in the things I like, so I'd imagine it's the same for those guys, especially, with the amount of time. I know it's still a little bit lower at the D2 level, but we're still early
Oh,
in the
it's a lot of
morning.
time though.
Yeah, but still early in the morning, still training a lot, still, that adversity, the working towards those things that we want to achieve that we can then take to the field to perform. There is a lot of bonding there and whatnot, so why not go out to their games, why not show support, because you've helped develop them to what they're doing now. You've helped in
Yeah.
that development process of making them the best athlete in that sport that they're competing in, regardless of what it is. Now I'd say after I was done with football, my wife definitely got me into volleyball. So I think
Volleyball is so much fun.
I'd be pretty comfortable, being a sport coach to a degree there because I did do a little bit of men's leagues here and there, so I got the formations, or rotations, and all that down, and understanding a little bit of that stuff. So I think
It's fun.
volleyball I can relate to big time.
I played a few seasons of that. My son's playing it now. In his program, it's only their second year and he's a sophomore, so they're still learning. But you start to see certain things click. It's a fun game. It's a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
fun.
eventually, yeah, like especially if you can stick with it. Because again, it is that difference of it being more of a skill sport, right? Similar to what we were talking
Yeah.
about. With football, rugby, there's still skill involved, but to a certain degree. Like if you can't swing at a volleyball, you can only do so much. If you can't
Yeah,
hit a ball,
exactly.
you can't swing at a ball. If you can't kick a ball, in those respective sports, there's only so much you can do physical wise. But that still doesn't mean that there's instances of where strength or that physicality takes place. But again, with it being a skill sport, it's going to be a little bit more technique based. But
Yeah.
to see this, like when I was playing, to see that technique kind of grow, because I had a wonky swing to begin with, but then once I started understanding how to pull back, all the different swing types,
Yeah.
we were having fun with some of the games that we'd play.
You see some of the older people too who not knocking them, they're not in the best shape, and I'm sure you're in much better shape than most, but these guys crush the ball and they
Oh
maybe
no,
get 6 inches off the ground.
I've gotten destroyed by plenty of older people who don't even get up
Yeah.
to the net just because they have great timing and they know how to play, which is another thing I love. Like with strength and conditioning or with all this training is there's no one specific solution uh to a task, right? So like
Yeah.
those older guys or older women are dunking on me still even though they're under the net and I'm up to block just because their way of
Yeah.
solving that problem of dealing against me is way different than how I solve it against them.
And
So
then, they get both hands up over, or you get both hands, you're like, I got this block. And then they tank it off your hands out of bounds. Gosh, they just outsmarted me on that one. But that's the game, that's a lot of fun.
yeah.
So, a question for you here. We got a wide range of listeners here, but I know a lot have kids who are, middle school, high school. So if kids have aspirations to get to the collegiate level, are there any recommendations you have in terms of like programming or training? And I know it's a general statement because it's
Oh yeah.
individualized a lot for per person and per sport and where they're coming from, but just
Yeah.
some general hacks, so to speak.
Yeah, I definitely say, especially at the younger ages, I think it was something I would benefit from was just playing more sports. I know as you get older, it's important to get specific. And I know that's probably a pretty usual answer, but it's just to, again, especially at those younger ages, if you want to again think back to that bank, I guess a different style of bank, at those younger ages, you're so pliable or so able to
Yeah.
take different information, you know, take, I know, for example, comes to my mind real quick is like Kobe or his daughters or whatnot, Kobe Bryant, how he was able
Yeah.
to learn different languages. I think either when he was a kid or his kids were younger, or just teaching them, being able to learn those, that plasticity you get, you know.
Yeah.
The same
Well,
with
he grew
movement.
up in Italy and was around. He was around a lot of different languages. So yeah.
Exactly. There's just, for me, it's just a complete net positive to expose yourself to the, again, these different tasks that require different solutions for you to complete. So for me to only be in football, right? It's something where you'll hear when I'm taking swings in the cage, or where I'm, playing volleyball is, oh, you move, or when I'm playing basketball, it's, oh yeah, you play like a football player, right? It's easy to see that, right?
Yeah.
Compared to now someone who played some baseball. I think the two biggest ones are, the main one that comes to my head is gymnasts can do almost anything
Oh yeah.
because
Yeah.
of the requirements of what they're doing, right? But my brain goes to, okay, this is how I'm so used to moving. I'm so used to moving in this context, whether it's laterally, uh, or however, right? Just because did it so much on the field. But let's say I had some baseball background, let's say I had some volleyball background, soccer background. You just expose yourself to a whole lot of different movement, not issues, but movement obstacles that require certain solutions that, again, you expose yourself to. You're able to complete these tasks in a whole bunch of different contexts. So just being able to play as many sports, and then not be shy of resistance training, not be shy of just general training, because again, those general qualities of just jumping, sprinting, lifting are all going to contribute to your abilities when they get specific.
I love that you said more like play a lot of sports. There's definitely a push for kids to play one sport year round with AAU and other club teams, and you get really good in whatever planes of motion that sport needs. But as soon as your body has to shift to a different, like you said, some different function or movement it's not used to, it doesn't perform as well, or it leads to injuries a little more easily that way. So, um, we don't. I actually only asked that question to one other person, I think, he worked with the Philadelphia 76ers as the player development specialist and everything, and that was the same advice that you just gave, was play multiple sports growing up so that your body can learn every which way it has to go. The same thing lifting at the gym. If you only do the same movement every time you go in, you're going to get great at that. But as
Yeah.
soon as you try something slightly different, you're not going to do well.
Yeah, I think it's just almost seeing it. However, analogies that are popping in my head right now, whether it's, getting a study guide for a test, that test being whatever sport you continue to go on to actually specify in or specialize in, that study guide still gave you a whole lot of information. That study guide being playing other sports,
Yeah,
introducing or exposing yourself to different movements. And then it's the same thing with using that resistance training, like someone who's never, and it's something where I'd be working with my cousin-in-laws here now who, they see me lift, they want to lift a little bit. Um, After some convincing from me telling them I'm not expecting them, to put 315 on the bar right away. Like
yeah,
giving them, getting them to understand, that progression or that progressive overload principle or whatnot. But they think, oh, getting to parallels full depth, why not try to get a little deeper? It's all about just reducing, for me, inhibition. Reducing
yeah.
that inexperience the body has being put in that certain position, or under that certain load, or performing that certain task, is just all reducing about those inhibitions that come up.
Now, do you do much with nutrition, or is that you have a nutrition coach or a sports dietitian that works alongside you guys? How's that work?
We don't. I know, like a Northern, they're partnered with like this beef company, I think, called Build Your Base, or like their thing is called Build Your Base. So it just has, yeah, we have posters and stuff put up around, and then I think, you know, with soccer especially is something where I'm glad I'm getting the experience too. For me, as far as like the training goes, I haven't seen a big difference as far as working with a female population versus male population, besides the whole demeanor.
Yeah,
I'm definitely gonna be more supportive to create buy-in, more supportive to understand, letting them know like, hey, it's okay to push hard with this. But I think the big difficulty is getting them to understand or being comfortable talking to them about, the basic nutrition stuff as far as what I know I'm qualified or allowed to talk to them about, which is just
Yeah.
macros, understanding what uh why you want to take in this amount of protein, this amount of carbs, this amount of fat, what they contribute to. Um, Pretty much it comes down to those little small talks after lifts. And because another reason I do those small talks is because I know at Boise, right, the coaches get a lot of time to talk with you, right? Meetings on top of meetings on top of meetings at
Yeah.
the Division 1 level. With us, right? Even though I'm in that coach position, I'm still having to take full-time graduate classes that kind of take up that time that I would like to use a little bit more towards, what I
I
know
got you.
wanting to be a professional in. So it'll be a little bit of, hey, make sure we're eating, because it'll be one of my athletes on soccer was like, "Oh, I'm cutting out sugar. Like I'm done eating sugar and stuff." I was like, "Why?" It'd be like candy and stuff. I'll be like, "Ah, still like you're definitely gonna see me have a pack of Skittles in the weight room, because I'll burn through energy like crazy." But I was like,
Yeah.
let's not do that. So after that lift, I'm talking to him about, if anything, especially the sport you guys are playing, we gotta carb up. Like we gotta get
Yeah.
calories in. And again, I think it's the same stigmas and stuff that's been discussed constantly in this kind of field of getting female athletes to be comfortable being elite or trying hard, or not being uncomfortable for towards being passionate, or because you look different than whatever the stereotypical image of a female is, right?
Yeah.
Getting them to look past that, which I think a lot of places have been doing a great job at at providing that kind of support of, look your part. If you're gonna get some mass put on you, be proud of it, because that's what ultimately is gonna get you to be more elite on the field. Stuff
Yeah.
like things
Oh,
like that.
I think that's the big part. And, we talk to a lot of like older people as well. And we've had guests on who focus on women in their 50s and 60s and 70s. And understanding the value in what you're eating, I think is huge at all levels. Like if you're running marathons and everything like that, you're gonna have to eat very differently than somebody who just wants to put on some mass and likes to play golf on the weekends every now and then. Like it's your body's going to need very different things. So understanding how it uses what's being put in and the benefits of the things you're putting in there, and you got to live a little too. Like I'm not a skills guy, but give me some Swedish fish, and I'm going to be just as happy as I'm sure you are with the Skittles. So you need that stuff though, and there's a time and place for it, as long as that's not your dinner, um,
Yeah,
as opposed
I
to
agree.
what you should be putting in.
Yeah, and I'll be the first one to say, like, I definitely don't have the best meal prep setup. I know my wife definitely is probably the sole reason why we're having whole meals every day. If not, like, and you got, one of my fellow GAs he graduated this year, so he's already down in Texas for his full-time job. He's doing the H2F, so he's going the military route with strength and conditioning. But
Oh,
you
awesome.
ask him, and he hooked it up a good amount of times, bringing in Easter candy and stuff like that. But I do really got a crazy sweet tooth, which, so again, another side note, going to the dentist for the first time in like 10 years, only had 4 cavities that had to get filled. So still got pretty good, care of my teeth, even with all the stress.
Yeah, I
Good.
hadn't gone since pre-COVID, and I went about a month ago. I had no cavities. She's like, "That's not normal. Like, you probably should have something." But I just lucked out. I think I don't know. I try. I eat. I've gotten in a good routine where I'm getting my protein in, and I did. I've said it a few times, but on here, but I love ice cream. So I
Yeah.
got a Ninja Creamy, and I'll make my own protein ice creams. And actually, my favorite one is just mango, pineapple, and you pour in some coconut water and it makes like a sorbet, but it's
Oh, that's
just
nice.
that's it. There's nothing else added to it. And it's fantastic. So I've been learning to use that as my sweet tooth, which usually does it. On occasion I need those Swedish fish or a Reese's cup sometimes, but
Yeah, that's pretty good. You're already getting me thinking about going to the store now. So yeah, ice cream in a little bit.
Yeah, no, dude, I'm telling you, if you want a little treat, I don't know why my camera keeps blurring here, but that's like a pint of it, 350 calories, 40 grams of protein, maybe 6 to 10 grams of sugar, and most of it's from the milk. So it's good. I can't stress that one enough. I keep pushing that out on people. They're probably sick of hearing me, but it's good.
Awesome.
It's good. Um, oh, and I'm sorry to bring this up as a Seahawks fan. I think you can see that I'm from the Boston area. I
Yeah.
I still am in shock that Marshawn did not get the ball on the 1 yard line and they somehow
Yeah.
decided to throw it.
Well, I got a monthly discussion with my wife about it because it'll always pop up whether I'm looking at Reels or on YouTube because it is just gonna be one of the biggest mistakes
Oh,
for the
and it's
millennium.
not a hard.
It's never
Oh
gonna go away.
no, no.
Actually, Boise too, because that'll be the because of all the noise Ashton just because he killed it this
Yeah.
last year, right? So they're like, hey, so what if Ashton was on the Seahawks? I'm like, he's fine, same issue. And Pete
He's
Carroll not.
got the same coach. Carroll's coaching the Raiders, so he's got to deal with that.
Hopefully
You
he
and
learned
you learned
his
his lesson, though.
lesson. Oh no, with that.
Oh. That was and Lynch, he still had, and people are probably bored, but I don't care. The best run of any running back I've ever seen against the Saints,
It's
where he
gonna be
trucked about 12 people and there are only 11 defenders. I think he hit one guy twice.
yeah,
But that,
especially at the professional level. Like again, like
oh,
when you're around athletics, like that type of execution is also something that just I want to stay around. Like even
yeah,
myself, thinking like this is kind of a side rant again, but like just seeing like whenever um, we'll be watching baseball a lot, and my wife would be like, "Why would he swing at that?" I was like, "Babe, that thing's going at 98 miles an hour." Like this, especially with the way pitchers can curve the ball when they pitch now is like like the style or however they do it, man. That's
yeah,
like we're looking at the cream of the crop of what we're able to accomplish, like what humans are able to do in these certain contexts is just crazy, so to just rant about that, like again, like it looks
it's I
easier,
when I was
but
working with that baseball program, I remember trying to stress the importance of recovery in sleep, where I can't remember the number, but your reaction time from, especially at the major league level, you have barely
yeah,
any time to react. And if you're not sleeping or recovering, you're killing your reaction time. Like your bank, like you've got nothing left in the bank and you're supposed to react on one of those 98-mile-an-hour ones.
yeah.
That, yeah.
That's always a big thing too, talking with baseball guys. And then soccer came up too, again, only having them for a semester, still working on building that trust, getting them to buy in and getting them to understand everything. But it popped up for they had a big scrimmage weekend of just understanding, nutrition isn't just outside of playing or outside of training. I would even say like if they're able to, right? Because at this level, there's not as much resources to pull from as far as nutrition and all that. Like we were talking
Yeah.
about, we still give them, they still get protein shakes, snacks, and all that. But during game is that understanding hydration, and again, not just water. I think is now the next step that we're starting to head towards, which I like, is just understanding that water isn't the only part of that equation with hydration, but it is the sodium, magnesium, calcium, getting all the
Yeah.
electrolytes possible. Because guys will be like, why am I still cramping? I drank so much today. I was like, well, we can actually even dilute ourselves a bit more, right? So we can even
Yeah.
dehydrate ourselves from drinking too much water. So understanding we got to mix in, and I'll be like, hey, even if it's just going to Walmart, and I know they're getting expensive now, but try to get as many Pedialytes as we can, right?
Yeah.
Where, you know, we kind of got to understand that and I haven't said this to them, but like ignoring kind of that recommendation of 2,400 milligrams limit, because that's for regular population, gen pop, right?
Yeah.
At this level, when you guys are in the weight room for an hour and a half, or we're out on the track and the weight room for an hour and a half, and then you got practice, there's no shot your body's going to nervous system, our system in general is going to survive off 2,400 milligrams of sodium. So getting them to understand, implement that salt, implement whatever other hydration for electrolytes they can get. Has been another big thing to get them to understand. In baseball, they did something cool, and I think the trainer Allison helped out a lot with that too. Of bringing oranges, bringing that fruit, not only from a hydration perspective, but also sugar and quick carb, fast carb perspective as well to keep them, especially on those double header days, which they had a lot this season,
Mm.
to keep them going and being able to perform throughout that.
Yeah, that's it's important. There's so much to try and learn, and there's so much data and information out there that understanding what's right and what's going to be helpful, as opposed to, you hear people, and I don't want to give any examples to point people in the wrong direction, but a lot of people will say something contrarian to try and get their name out there, or something along those lines, and it
Yeah,
just makes it more confusing for everybody. So steering
yeah,
them in the right direction is huge.
yeah. That's definitely been a little because I've had a couple guys send me reels or whatnot of training things on Instagram, and they've all like for the most part they're good. They're definitely different. I'll say like I'm not someone that again going back to the amount of time I have with them, it is like it's low hanging fruit stuff.
Yeah.
I'd love to, I know a lot of them love like rotational work or whatnot. But and that's something I try to talk to him about of like you guys already get hundreds of swings a day. Like we're getting the rotation stuff in. If you get
Yeah.
right now, and if we care a lot about mobility, that's where that deep front squat plays a big role. That's where something I want to incorporate a little bit more of overhead squatting work is going to play a deep role if we want to talk about getting mobility better, full range of motion work. But getting them to understand that, just because you're seeing it online, just because you're seeing it from this guy doesn't mean it's the end all be all. I'll definitely, and something I've heard from, or I've gotten from Coach Neer, there's no one right way to train the guy. Again, same thing we were talking about, or I said earlier, you can have a terrible program objectively. Like you could be having baseball guys just run miles, but if they're bought in, there's no doubt that they'd probably get some benefit from it to a degree. But there's definitely a wrong way to do things. So knowing that if we trust the system, how we have it set up, because I don't know what those guys on Instagram and stuff are doing outside of the small little clips they
Yeah.
show. I don't know what part of the season they're in. I don't know. I can make a guess based on what they're doing, but again, I don't know. So it's getting them to understand that there are multiple different ways to handle the same task. It goes back to that big debate, right? Where a lot of people, and I'll always bring it up of the whole Olympic lift versus no Olympic lift, right? Uh, you can do both. Like you can
Yeah.
provide both and still get similar outputs or similar qualities built from either type of system you want to run. It's just a matter of what is your style and how can you make that fit to the guys. What do the guys need?
Yeah.
When I'm seeing them do that many at bats or getting that many reps at bats or those many pitches or that much throwing volume, I don't feel the need for the time we have to put in, a lot of med ball work. I'd rather focus on strength, focus on the ends of the force velocity curve with good sprints. Again, those general qualities I know they can get into their baseball work. So there'll definitely be a little bit of that uh, every so often that you'll just have to keep your best to, and that's again why I give the why to my athletes to give them the reason to why I'm implementing what I am with them, which I want to say a great amount of them have understood and showed that. There'll always be a little bit of like you're not going to get 100% buy-in from everybody, but the
No, no.
majority of them understand it and they like it a lot.
Well, I am in an old man softball league here in Massachusetts, and I'm going to need from you an off-season training plan for our team, because a lot of the guys are not doing much of anything. So if they hear it from you as opposed to me chirping in their ears, I think it might hold a little more water there.
I gotta get in. I want to play a softball league too, or baseball league or something. Just like I, especially like I feel like I'd have fun as an
It's
outfielder. Like I'd love to.
oh,
I
chasing
got
down the
trouble chasing,
fly.
but I'd like to just just
I've got a bad case of Achilles tendonitis in my right Achilles, so I'm afraid of those all out sprints in center field.
yeah
But it's a fun position to play. So that,
yeah.
yeah, you definitely have to get into that. If you find yourself in Massachusetts, give me a buzz and we'll pull you in for a game.
No problem. No problem.
All right, well, Tyler, thank you so much for hopping on with me. Where can people find you if they
Really,
want to
the
reach out?
main one I'm active on is just Instagram for the most part right now. So just Tyler JM Visser. Nothing in between, just my name with JM in the middle on Instagram. I'm trying to get better about posting a little bit. Just I feel like it's a good thing for athletes to see and then other people to see how I work. And then almost kind
Yeah.
of like a way to also look back at my own stuff to see, in case down the road I gotta, what would be a good thing to do? Oh, I did this with them at that point, or I did this with myself at some point.
Yeah.
because I still like to train myself and to try to be as athletic and whatnot as possible. So that'll be the main spot they can
All
look
right.
for
All right. I'll
sure.
definitely put that in the show notes so people can reach out. All right. Well, thank you, Tyler. I really appreciate it. All the listeners, I appreciate you guys listening. And I'll also just a reminder, June 18th, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to have a live show with 5 past guests hopping on with us. So make sure to check that out too. Tyler, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.